Hey guys, what's up? So this is an interview taken during the E3 from Junichi Masuda and Shigeru Omori about Pokemon Sword and Shield. This is to do with the E3 Expo, and here are the reasons for creating the Pokemon. So the first question they look at is, what do you hope the players get out of their experience in the Galar region? They argued the biggest theme in these games is the idea of being the greatest or the strongest, and they expressed this through the Nintendo Switch being the most powerful system that Pokemon games have been on before in terms of the graphical capabilities and hardware specifications, and the implementation of the Dynamax feature shows the overall strength of Pokemon. They want to see this come through to the players. Another question asked is about how long does it take to develop a new region and what goes into the planning of these worlds. Omori says that it depends on the game, but development can go on for quite some time. With Sword and Shield, they began the idea immediately after finishing Pokemon Sun and Moon. It took about a year to get the concept, and then they moved into full production, which makes sense because most of these games go through about a 3-year turnaround time. When creating the new Pokemon, they had this to say. What is the thought process behind creating new first partner Pokemon? Are they designed as first partners from the start, or do you design multiple new Pokemon and then decide which ones will become the first partners? Omori suggests the way the Pokemon design process works is different depending on the games. They had their planners and concept designers work to come up with the settings for where these 3 first partner Pokemon will be in the game, and they created a text file with thoughts of what that would be. They then worked with the artists and designers to come up with the designs that would fit that concept. So from the beginning, Scorbunny, Grookey, and Sobble were designed to be these games' first partner Pokemon. This is quite interesting, actually, because it suggests that they look at their environment first before they actually design the Pokemon. It kind of makes more sense for them to do this, as you're not randomly having to make excuses of where these Pokemon need to be and how to justify them. Pokemon.com asks, how do you define the individual character of each Pokemon? And Omori says to this, one thing that sets Pokemon apart from other character brands is that we don't set out to design the Pokemon to be characters themselves. Instead, they're supposed to be these living creatures that are believable as existing in their own environment, such as Wooloo. You can picture that living on its own in the wild like an animal would, but it's a bit different for the first part of Pokemon. We try to infuse them with a fixed personality. For example, Sobble is seen to be a crybaby, whilst others can be seen to be a little bit more excitable. Masuda says for the first partner Pokemon in particular, those are the first Pokemon that the player is going to choose, so having them convey a straightforward personality is important. It makes them a lot easier to choose from. Pokemon.com then asks, are you ever surprised by which Pokemon the public seems to catch on to? Omori says, when we were developing the new Pokemon, Wooloo was just another Pokemon that was there in the mix. I always thought it was cute, but it definitely caught me by surprise just how popular it became and how much the fans have embraced it. They then go on to mention about the development of the new game. They ask about what they learnt from the production of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Omori says, well, this was the first. These were the first games that they developed for the Switch, and it was used as a bit of a research project to understand how the system works and what they need to do to create the new Pokemon Sword and Shield. And they mention, actually, interestingly, that this test was necessary because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to have created Sword and Shield for the November release date. Pokemon.com then asks about the essential elements to having a Pokemon role-playing game. Amori suggests one of the things I always put a lot of focus on is the feeling of growing alongside your Pokemon throughout the adventure. And Masuda mentions one of the things about Pokemon in general is that the wild Pokemon start out as they're sort of like enemies, but you can catch them, and then they become your friends. So we want to make sure that the Pokemon never come across as too evil. They're not just bad guys, they can also be your friend. Having that kind of relationship is key to the series. They ask about what differences you can make to traditional role-playing games, and Amori mentions that the encounter rate with the wild Pokemon is always random encounters, and they did a lot of experimentation on ways they could change this up. Part of this was actually being able to physically see the Pokemon that you're catching, so rather than having to go through random chances and go through all these grassy areas, there are potentials. If you see a Pokemon you want, you're able to find them. Masuda also suggests that with every new game, they're thinking of the era in which the game is going to be released and who the target audience is. So depending on these variables, they will make changes every time. Amori suggests that part of this is to do with very small changes, such as being able to move freely within the wild area using a camera. This hasn't been within a game before. There was a lot of difficulty internally about whether they should let people control the camera, but they decided to go ahead with it anyway. They explain that part of this is to do with people being able to at this time have a need to be able to, control what they're doing, have more perspective. If you look at things like Breath of the Wild, they've already been introducing this, and so Pokemon has had to catch up with this. Pokemon.com then asks about whether Pokemon Sword and Shield is to be more of a portable experience or whether it's more of a console game that you sit down at home. Masuda suggests that it's really a mix of both. The introduction of the Dynamax Pokemon look a lot better on a larger screen, so maybe doing max raid battles is something you want to experience on a TV, but at the same time you could take it anywhere you go and enjoy They move on to the Dynamax Pokemon and the Max Raid battles. Pokemon.com asks about what the inspiration behind this new feature was. Amori suggests part of the reason is because they wanted to display the higher graphics and the differences in size between the Pokemon. On a smaller screen, it was more difficult to get the pixels to really convey the different situations. And they ask as well what the difference between Dynamaxing and Mega Evolution or Z moves are. Mori says we wanted to try a new take on that power-up gameplay that we had with Mega Evolution Z moves. We kind of combined the two of those in a way with Pokemon. With Dynamax, your Pokemon are powering up and growing much stronger, but also their moves change to be much stronger as well. They wanted a more strategic aspect by limiting it to only 3 turns. In contrast to something like Mega Evolution, where it could be as long as the Pokemon stays alive, really. When introducing a new element to Pokemon battles, such as Dynamaxing, how do you maintain a balance to keep the battles interesting? Amori says it's one of the goals that they tried to set out with was making it so that any Pokemon could be viable in battle. virtually all the Pokemon that can Dynamax in the game, even Pokemon that may not have had a chance to be in the spotlight until now, will have a chance to use that ability. That was one of the main things we considered from a balanced perspective. My personal view on this is actually, I consider it to be a good thing, because Mega Evolutions didn't go to all Pokemon, and with the Z moves, they were dependent on what your Pokemon knew. If they didn't know very powerful moves, then, you were a bit stuffed there. Pokemon.com asks, will you be able to use Dynamax Pokemon in player v player battles? Amori says actually you will be. They then ask about what was the inspiration between the max raid battles. Amori suggests that it was initially just to be seen as a feature, and then they thought it would be a lot of fun to have people team up with friends to take on the Pokemon as though it's an end of game challenge boss. There is a lot of performance abilities of the Nintendo Switch, so they're able to connect a number of players on the screen at once, and they consider it to be a nice feature for it. The other reason for it was to give the opportunity for players to work on multiplayer battles who enjoy battling but might be too intimidated to get into player versus player battles. So having this option means you can invite your friends to battle alongside you. They also ask about the whether you can challenge in a max raid battle by yourself. Amori mentions even if you don't have anyone else to play, you can challenge a max raid battle on your own. If you do this, the other player slots, which would normally be filled by human players, will have support trainers instead. They then continue on with the wild area, and they want to know about how it differs from the traditional routes in Pokemon role-playing games. They say that it's different from the typical routes, in that they wanted a place where it would be interesting to come back every day and see what has changed, something that would feel different each time you play. They needed a wide open space where you'd be able to do that. They also wanted to have some place that would support other players that you could play with, a big place that provides a sense of adventure where you can encounter other people, a place that has a sense of discovery. Pokemon.com then asks about the different methods of randomly encountering Pokemon, the exclamation points and the wild Pokemon that actually charge towards you, and how each of these methods work. Amori says that these different methods represent two different ways of playing, really. With Pokemon roaming around the field, you can see the Pokemon all behaving a bit differently. It feels like a lively environment with all the Pokemon around you, and you can see which Pokemon are out there. You can choose if you want to go catch them. You have a goal in mind when you go to encounter that Pokemon. You want to catch that specific one. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of enjoyment to be had in not knowing what you're going to get. So they wanted to mix essentially a bit of Pokemon Let's Go, where you could see the Pokemon, and the randomness of just random encounters. So what did you think of the interview? So what did you guys think of this interview with the creators? Do you understand why they've introduced the Galar region like this? What do you think of the different environments? Can you understand the thought process? And are there any issues you currently have with the games? As always, like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe and leave any comments you have below, and thank you very much for watching.